This is a GK Media podcast.
This podcast is part of the GK Media Studios Creators Network, helping people tell their stories. Become a storyteller today and learn about our podcaster network at gkmediastudios.com.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Wellth Talks with myself, Garry Kelly, Niall Leyden of Atlantic Wealth Management and Pádraic Ó Máille of Smácht. This week, we want to focus on something that I think a lot of people in business, especially leaders in business, will relate to. And it's something that is certainly at the core of why we wanted to start up Wellth Talks and expand it as well over the last couple of weeks. And that is this thing of entrepreneurial loneliness. And we can all relate back to it in a big way for those who are in business now. Back in around 2008, when the Celtic Tiger came to an end, the economy crashed, and the reality that was faced upon a lot of business owners. You were in the battlefield. You were at the forefront. You were meeting people on a day-to-day basis of people who are in business, losing their business, some losing their homes, marriages breaking up. I mean, it was absolutely catastrophic. We like to, I think, because it was 17 years ago, brush it under the rug and just forget about it. But it was a very, very dark time in Ireland and for many other people as well throughout Europe and even the US. A lot of people globally affected by a global economic crash. And you really saw the darkness of entrepreneurial loneliness back then for people.
I think we all did. And I'm really pleased we're talking about this because I think in history, and if history has taught us anything, we have to step back to look forward. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing twice and expecting a different result. And you're so right. I mean, in 2008, pre-2008, we saw what had happened, and I personally and professionally experienced all of this. So, you had the finance, you had the leverage, you had, as you say, the Celtic Tiger. I mean, it was like the party that was never going to stop. And then all of a sudden it was catastrophic. I mean, it was like the God forbid, the Titanic sinking. I mean, people lost their jobs, they lost their homes, they lost their businesses. A lot of people lost their lives. There's still people living with the legacy and the hangover from, the trauma of debt and so forth. So, I mean, when you talk about worry, it's something that we all worry. We're all human. We talk about mindset and you have a choice and a chance in terms of how you think and how you act and how you respond. But it's taken me 20 years and I still haven't cracked it in terms of how you deal with worry. Because, we worry about our kids, our parents, our family, our business, our clients. We worry about lots of different things and own the morning, own the day. But like going back to 2008, that has not been lost on any one of us. I mean, the three of us here experienced it, felt it, are still feeling it and the aftermath of it all. And I mean, I often listen back to some brilliant orators. I mean, I'm going to hand over very shortly to, the man that has transformed my thinking around worry and how to act, and we went through this. We went through this in terms of how what is it you're worrying about and so forth. Because Joe Smith once famously said, and I mean, you think back to what he did in 2013 to 2019, he looked after Ireland, won 3 Triple Crowns, won a Grand Slam. They went to number 1 in Ireland. We beat the All Blacks. But he was always talking about this self-dialogue. And, what do we say to ourselves, about ourselves, when we're by ourselves? And, it's what goes on in the head. So, I mean, I feel like, and I am an amateur talking about worry. I mean, Pádraic, you've transformed businesses. You've facilitated Smácht. You've brought businesses from the brink back to being successful. So, like, I mean, you could write a book on this. You have written a book on this.
I've written a book. And if I did, I based it on another book, and many of our listeners will be familiar with a book called How to Win Friends and Influence People. It's one of the most iconic books, and in HR, it's absolutely brilliant. The guy was Dale Carnegie. What a lot of people don't know is the story behind Carnegie. Carnegie became a really big success in America. He started, which I think is a brilliant idea, he started doing public speaking classes. You spoke in another episode, Niall, about me getting you to stand up in Ballyfaughan. That's what Carnegie did. And he opened up schools all over America. And then the 1936 depression came, the World Economic Depression. And he lost everything. And he was in hospital. And he was still only in his late 20s. And a doctor took him aside and said, look at Mr. Carnegie. It's like this. if you do not learn to conquer worry, you will be dead within a year. And Carnegie said, but how can I owe so much money. How can I not worry? And the doctor shared with him a very simple formula. And Carnegie shared it in his book. And I've been using it ever since. And I've kind of adapted it. It's 6 simple questions. And I'll give you an example afterwards. First question is, what are you worried about? Yeah. Second question is, what are the facts? The third is, what is the worst case scenario if it all goes pear-shaped? Fourth question is, could you handle it? And those are the 4 negative questions. The 2 positive ones are, number 5, what can you do about it? And number 6, what will you do about it? Now, let me give you a simple example. Back to those days, 2009, 2010, in the town of Galway, where I grew up in. And this girl, a very successful business person, arrived in. I had offices down in Dominic Street.
Yeah, that's right.
You remember them, Garry. And she arrived in, and she was a good friend of mine. I knew her personally. And she was rabbiting on about the economy and a lot of the stuff Niall was talking about. And I remember saying, will I be her friend here, or will I be a professional? And something egged me go into Carnegie here. And I always remember, let's call the girl Carmel, yeah? Mm-hmm. I said, Carmel, what are you worried about? And she kind of, it stopped her in her tracks. She was hoping I'd sympathise with her and say, isn't that awful? And all my clients are saying that, and they're all experiences. I said, what are you worried about? And there was a big sigh, and she said, I'm worried that the phone has stopped ringing. And I knew we had hit pay dirt. I knew we knew what she was worried about. I said, that's okay, Carmel. That can happen. I said, how many people did you call? How many prospective clients did you call this week? Oh, she said, this week now, she said, I was on a little break. I was on a hen party at the weekend. I said, that's fair enough. Those things happen. How many prospective clients did you call last week? She said, you won't believe it, but last week we were painting the offices. And she was getting a bit narky. I said, that's okay, Carmel. How many prospective clients did you talk to the week before? And she went into a snot. She went into a total hissy fit. And she got thick with me. Yeah. And I knew it because the facts of the matter were pretty clear to me. And I went into professional mode. So question number 3, I said, this was February, I think, of 2009. And I said, Carmel, if you refuse to talk to prospective clients, how long will you stay in business? And she said, I'll probably survive till June. I have a few savings till June. Now, this was a really negative place to bring her, but I brought her and I could see her face. And I said, can you handle it? And she said, well, if I have to, I probably can, but I don't want to do that. I don't want to go through the embarrassment, the letdown. I don't want to go through a life of poverty. And I said, fair enough. And I had brought her down to a low. I said, what can you do about it? And she absolutely, she said, I'll have you know, I'm brilliant at, I won't name her game. I can actually help clients get out of, I can help clients survive the recession. I can do this, that, and the other.
Fabulous.
And I said, Carmel, what will you do about it? And she was really thick. And I always remember she took deep breaths and she said, if I've got to stay up all night tonight, I am going to write a sales letter. And I'm going to send a handwritten letter to 3 of my clients every day. And I'm going to follow that up with a phone call. And I'm going to do that every day. And she got up in her stilettos and she went out and she slammed the door. And I said, whoa, this has been made in 2025. And I can tell you that girl's business is flourishing now. Wow, because after 15 minutes, although she didn't like it, she left with, once again, maybe Niall's 3 Ps. She left with a purpose, and the purpose was to survive this. She left with a plan of action, brilliant plan of action, if I might say. Yeah. And her portfolio is so bloody full at the minute. And it's all based on those 6 questions. Now, who can you do them with? So I did it with a client, but it's not just for consultants. It's 6 brilliant sales questions. Stop trying to worry about closing clients. Stop going on courses. Go out with those 6 questions. If you sit down with a client and say, what are you worried about? Gee, I'm worried about what Trump will do in America. Okay, well, what are the facts? well, we don't really know the facts. Well, how could you find out a bit more? Who could you talk to? What is the worst case scenario? And all of a sudden you're engaging your client and you're not lecturing them. You're not selling to them. You're enabling them. Now, what can you do about it? Well, I'll tell you, I could read about it. I could sit with somebody in marketing like you, Garry. I could actually sit down and talk with Niall Leyden about a financial plan. What will you do about it? Okay, I will ring Niall Leyden by the end of today. That is a fierce proactive step.
Yeah, but ring Garry Kelly first, though. Before you go your money to Niall Leyden, ring me first.
Yeah. But you get it. And I think, why can't this be taught in schools? Like, I'll be honest with you, I've learned it because when you're in business, you get toughened and you get hardened and you kind of get good at this. We're great survivors, entrepreneurs. We thrive on the fight and we thrive on the struggle and we almost boast about it. I must say that adolescence was the most difficult period of my life. I thought it was an extremely difficult, despite all the blasé and the bluster and all of that crack. I would love to have been taught that formula. What are you worried? I'm worried about failing the Leaving Cert. Yeah, what are the facts? Well, I've done feck all for the last 3 years, so kind of deserve it. What's the worst case scenario? I end up not getting a job. What you're doing instead of lecturing a kid like mothers and fathers often do, you need to be doing more study. What you're actually doing, you're getting the kid to identify the problem. Now, what can you do about it? Well, I could spend 2 nights a week really studying hard. I could get a grind in maths, which is my worst subject. What will you do about it? I'll actually get that grind in maths because it'll set a good routine. Brilliant 6 questions, Garry. And
do you know what? It works. I've been using it with our clients all over the country. I mean, sitting down, and these are people with 6 and 7 and 8-figure net worths. I mean, I was often asked the question, what is wealth? And it's a really thought-provocative question. And I think wealth's greatest negative accomplishment is freedom from financial worry. Mm-hmm. So when I'm sitting with a business or an owner, and whether we're looking at cash flow or tax or legacy or kids or whatever it might be, and I said, look, I'm just going to -3. What are you worried about? Write it down to fill a page. What are you going to do about it? And what will you do about it? And I mean, you can just see people. It's liberating.
It is liberating.
Because it's mad. Like, you have clients who are multimillionaires, but at the same time, you've said to me, some of them are just not happy at all.
I don't know how to best phrase it. There are a lot of these people with really, 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 really strong balance sheets that are lying awake at night worrying about tax, worrying about legacy, worrying about succession, worrying about health. So they have the money, but they haven't the peace. The ultimate, the highest form, I think, of wealth is, again, the freedom to do what you want, where you want, with whom you want, when you want. I mean, it's the time. It's picking up the kids from school. It's being able to take a Friday afternoon and, spend time with your parents. The small things are big things in life, So, that worry formula is just gold. Brilliant. I love it.
And you mentioned one thing as well. You wish, Pádraic, that you were taught this in school. And I remember pre-COVID, in school, they were doing a thing in where my kids go. It was, forget the exact term for it, but it was like to give a break to the brain. So they take time out during the day to give a couple of minutes of just silence in the classroom, just for people to become aware of what they're thinking about and just to kind of let those thoughts go and just clear the head. And I think often when you're in business, the one question I always hate from people is, how's business? Because it feels straight away you need to go into pitch mode. You need to tell them everything is great. You can't say, well, today's good, but yesterday, this one that was wrecking my head, or, the cash flow is bad, or whatever, I've this bill to pay, everything always has to be good. And I know when I talk to people in business and I say, how's business? If they're looking at the floor, I know when they're responding to me that things aren't amazing at the moment. And it's a roller coaster. You have good days and bad days and so on. But, when you're always carrying the weight of something, right, as an owner in business, and you meet your team, everything has to be great and, motivational. You meet your client, everything's great. You meet someone on the street or, a parent might say, or a partner, how are things? You're always putting on this front that everything is good. Yeah. And it makes you more isolated. Yes, and hence you get this entrepreneurial loneliness.
Absolutely.
And the worst thing we can do is then be inside our heads. Honestly, I think we need...
you put it brilliantly.
To get out of our heads. So, doing those 6 questions is vital. But if you can't do it with yourself, or you don't have someone to bounce it off with yet, just the worst thing we can do is be lying in bed all night long.
But
absolutely.
To that point, the importance of having a peer group. I mean, there's no point in bottling all of this stuff up.
Yeah.
You know, it's one thing getting in the sea or going to the gym or walking the dog or whatever it is, whatever your release is to get the head right, mind, body and soul. But I mean, everyone's in business, you know, and ultimately, outside of good health, what does anyone ever want? A good lifestyle.
Absolutely. Well, our mother said it. A problem shared is a problem halved. You know, a problem shared is a problem halved. Great Smácht member, Pat Harold, he's a GP in Nina. And Harry had a statistic that I forget it now. Niall's much better on statistics. He said that 20 years ago, we had as many as 20 close friends. You know, so it'd be great family people. People you could ring up in the middle of the night and say, look, this is all gone pear-shaped on me. You know, I'm in bits or I'm whatever. He says nowadays, you are very lucky if you have 3 close friends because of social media, because of the speed of life, because of the busiest of life. And he said the problem is, Garry, it's exactly as you said. He said, we're internalizing so much now. We're bottling it up, And that's what's creating anxiety and it's creating worry. In the old days, we shared it a lot more. We did. You know, we were out talking with people. We were walking with people.
We were out more in general.
We were out more. We were out all the time. We were out all the time.
We spoke about that earlier.
But we were socializing a lot more. You know, there was those communal places you'd go to and you'd share your problems over a beverage or something.
And sorry, there's a build on that. I guess the lesson is socialize more. Get out with your friends for coffees, for teas, for pints, for holidays. And that's sharing. So it is. We're not bottling it up. It's getting it out of us.
And health. I mean, it's okay to getting out there and having a laugh and having a bit of crack and having a bit of banter. I mean, everyone's working hard, doing the hard yards, but getting out at the weekends, you know, it's the simple things, isn't it? Yeah.
He was looking for an excuse all week and he's now got it, Garry.
So, I think the lesson here is, you know, if you are going through something that's worrying you at the moment, go through those 6 questions that Pádraic had mentioned that you basically just ask yourself one by one. Do you want to just give us the 6 again? Just to remind people, save them, kind of remind
first
them
question,
back.
and you can either ask it of yourself, you can ask it of a family member, or you can ask it of a client, or you can ask it as a team meeting. What are we worried about? So the first question is, what are you worried about? Very powerful, Garry. And very few people ever ask us what we're worried about. It's a sign of massive respect. It really is. What are you worried about? Because as you say, we're putting up such a false show to kind of keep our own shows on the road. And it's all when somebody asks us what we're worried about, it's priceless. So that's the second question is, what are the facts? Before, you know, Niall said it earlier off air. He said, we worry about so many things that never happen. You know, I think it was Mark Twain who said, I've died an old man and I've worried about many things, most of which never happened. So the second thing is, what are the facts? Sylvie Nealon talks about confronting the brutal facts. Sylvie is another brilliant expression. All facts are friendly. All facts are friendly. It's brilliant. They love it in Smácht, so they do. Because what it's forcing us to do is, what are the facts? Why are sales down? Why am I losing great people? Why aren't they talking to me at home? What are the facts? The third question is, what's the worst case scenario? That sounds negative, but it's really powerful. Very often, we all say it. I remember Pat McDonough in Supermax saying, he said, when our backs are to the wall, that's when we're most powerful. So the worst case scenario does help us confront that. Number 4 is, can you handle it? I still remember a great, I've shared the story with you, Garry, before. Great businessman in Galway here. And he came in to me one day and his property portfolio was decimated back in that awful time. And I says, what are you worried about? And he's laughing. He says, I'm worried I owe so much. And I went into professional mode and I said, exactly what is your net worth at the moment? He says, I haven't a clue. And he laughing. Well, I said, before we speak any further, and I'm not the financial consultant, I said, you come back to me in a week's time with the facts. And he kind of went out and he came back smiling again. And I said, well, it's obviously gone a lot better than you thought. No, he said, it's 3 times as bad. He says, it is way worse. My property is worth an awful lot less than I even thought. And I said, what are you laughing about? Well, he was kind of laughing because he had confronted reality. And I said, what's the worst that can happen? He says, the worst that can happen is I go back to living in a terraced house. And I said, the fourth question, could you live with that? And he said, I was brought up in a terraced house. He said, I can go back to living in a terraced house. I don't know if my wife and kids can. And that actually worried him more than he did. They were used to the house on the hill, all of the good side of things. But it brought him down to it. Yes, he could handle it. And then I said, what can you do about it? He said, I can go and speak to each of those financial institutions. I can put my case to them and say, here's a plan, here's what I can do. And then I said, what will you do about it? Yeah. And he said, I will go and I think there were 7 financial institutions. He said, I will go and meet with each of them and I will put my case to them. And I won't say the guy was happy, Garry, but he had a plan of action. He had confronted his fears and his beasts. And so those are the 6 questions. Brilliant. Very simple, very powerful.
So
I'm sorry, one final caveat, and it's old-fashioned. You see me with a biro here. I know. It's very important you write these out. Yeah. A lot of people try to do them in their head. Now, I can do them with you or Niall, and I can write them for you, and I can give them back to you. If you're doing them on yourself, try not to do them in your head. Writing is a fierce, I'm really old-fashioned, but it's visual. I can see my own writing. It's oral because we're talking to ourselves while we write. It's also very tactile. Your own signature, it's totally unique. It totally gets in with your subconscious mind. So it's the little simple thing Niall talked about. You wake up in the middle of the night, don't hope you'll go back to sleep. Get up with a notebook. I've often done it in the dark and I look at it the next day. But by writing it down, what am I worried about? What are the facts? Yeah. And very often it's about if a gig the next day, what the facts are. Haven't really prepared for it. Yeah. What's the worst case scenario? And I write it out. Writing it out is key. Really crucial. Brilliant, sorry, just putting in that.
No, that's super. That's super. Brilliant. Thanks a million.
Absolute gold.
Yeah. So there you go. If you're worried, work through those 6 questions, get out of your head. And I think really joining a group, like having a mastermind group, having a peer-to-peer group like Pádraic's Smácht group will, and Niall and I can testify to this, just completely transforms everything in your life for you in such a positive way. So plenty of food for thought heading into this weekend. Thank you, gentlemen.
See you all next week. Thanks, Pádraic. Thanks, Garry.
Thanks, Niall, and thanks, Garry.